Well, I'm here with Phil Vampatella, who's got an awesome story to tell us. Phil, thanks for joining us today. We would like to hear about your career and flying fighters through a very tumultuous time in U.S. history. So thank you for joining us.
Well, it's a pleasure. I don't know how interesting my career is, but it had a moment or two that might be worth mentioning.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, tell me, let's start out. How'd you get in aviation in the first place?
That's actually probably the best part of the story. I went to Rutgers University, and after 3 years, I got a letter from them inviting me not to come back for my senior year. I flunked out.
Oh, really?
I did. I had a heck of a good time.
And so how did you, how'd you go from there? I mean, were you flying at all or?
That's part of the story. I went to work as a laborer in the construction crew, pushing a wheelbarrow, drinking a lot. And my sister, who I thank every time I see her, said, "You're turning into a bum. Why don't you go join the Navy?" And I said, "Heck of a good idea." And I went down to the Navy recruiter the next day. And I said, "I want to join up," fully expecting him to hand me a mop, a swab. And he said, "Well, you have a couple of years of college and you don't seem to be drooling too much. Would you be interested in an aviation program?"
Wow.
He said, "We have a program with 2 years of college. We'll teach you how to fly airplanes." So I said, "Well, sure, what the heck."
Yeah, there you go.
And I took the aptitude tests and I wowed them. I did great. And he said, if you can pass the physical, we'll enroll you in the Naval Aviation Cadet Program in Pensacola, teach you how to fly airplanes.
That's awesome.
I passed the physical, and my very first airplane ride, my first time I ever was near or touch an airplane, was in an Eastern Airlines Electra going from New York City, Idlewild Airport. That's what it was called then. Now it's Kennedy. From Idlewild to Pensacola to learn how to fly airplanes.
Wow. What year is this?
1962.
Wow. Okay. Jeez.
Yeah. And I found that I was pretty good at it.
Yeah. What'd you fly in primary? What was primary like back in 1962?
I flew, started out in T-34s, and then I went to T-28s, and wow. I was told, or the pipeline I was in was destined to fly props or helicopters. Mm-hmm. And they instituted a program called the PEP program, PEP, Pipeline Evaluation Program. They were going to try to decide if guys going into the jet program would do better if they had a little prop time. Mm-hmm. So they took 5 classes out of the prop pipeline and they put them into the jet program. They took 5 guys who were above average, 5 guys who were a little above average, 5 guys below average, 5, you get the picture. Yeah. And they sent us to Meridian, Mississippi to learn how to fly jets. And I was lucky enough to be in the first class. What they found out was it didn't much matter what pipeline you were in. If you could fly one airplane, you could fly another. And because the guys in the first class did really well, the guys in the last class did poorly. So I don't know what it proved, but it did get me into the jet pipeline. So I got to fly T2s, T2As.
Wow. Well,
Yeah,
well, so your first time flying in the T-34, did you have any issues with like motion sickness since you'd never flown before? I mean, was it any kind of issues for you?
no. The only the only thing memorable about that was he kept saying, "Well, there's the instructor was in the back seat," and he kept saying, "Well, there's the airport. Do you see it?" And I go, "I don't see any airport." And I didn't even know what I was looking for. And then after a while, he said, "Listen," he said, "I need a smoke." And I dropped my cigarette lighter. "Would you pick it up off the canopy for me?" I had no idea what he was saying. And he rolled the thing inverted, and the lighter clacked, uh, fell down onto the canopy. I picked it up, I handed it back to him. And I said, "Geez, if you could do that in an airplane, that's pretty cool. Maybe I like this stuff."
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, what was flying the T2 like?
It was, it was an airplane. It was nothing to
Yeah.
get excited about. It was aerobatic, and that was my first carrier landings was on in a T2. So I guess that was semi noteworthy.
Yeah.
I was pretty good at it. So
That's
they
awesome.
sent me down to advanced training in Beeville, Texas. And Beeville, Texas is where I flew F9s and then F11s. Uh,
Wow.
an absolutely beautiful airplane that was not worth a whole lot except for the fact that it did go fast and it was beautiful, but it couldn't carry much for armament and couldn't stay up very long. It's a great, fun airplane. First airplane I went supersonic in. Yeah,
Oh, awesome.
nice.
Awesome.
I had a good time down in the good time that I had in college. I carried on to Beeville, Texas. Had a pretty good time there. I actually had a pretty good time in Pensacola as well. So
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome. And this is, I mean, the Vietnam War is kind of gearing up at this point. So were you looking at this is where I'm going as soon as I finish training?
yeah, we pretty well knew that it was cranking up, and I think I think things were warming up, and it may be even the reason that the Navy was accepting guys with only 2 years of college. I'm not entirely sure, but
Hmm.
uh, things were starting to heat up, and they could see the handwriting on the wall. So
Yeah.
yeah, we knew we were going over that pretty much.
So after the F-11, what'd you end up flying?
Well, that's when I got my wings. I got designated a naval aviator and got my commission. And they gave us three choices of airplanes to fly. Uh, and I put down as my first choice the A4, and then my second choice was the F4, and my third choice was the F8. And they gave me the F8. So I went, my first post designation assignment was to go to Miramar in San Diego
Oh, wow.
to
Yeah.
learn,
Beautiful area.
yeah, to learn how to fly F-8 Crusaders, and that's where I spent the rest of my time in the service. I'm
Wow.
not in that squadron, but in that airplane.
Right, right. And that's the F-8. I mean, so your first time flying it, you're single seat, all alone, unafraid, kind of, they just cut you loose at that point?
I don't know, but I'm afraid. Yeah, you had a guy on your wing, but we had a crude simulator that was more a procedures trainer than it was anything else.
Hmm.
But we went through that, and they give you a pretty good briefing, and then they turn you loose. They give you the center of the runway, and then instructor is on your wing. He's got a little piece of the runway, and he hopes you don't run him off it. and away you go. Yeah. And after a couple of minutes in the airplane, I finally caught up with it, sort of. And I found out I loved the machine. It was a wonderful airplane.
That's awesome. I mean, is it like dogfighting in BFM? Was it pretty formidable, or was it just? I mean, could it turn, or what was kind of your tactic back then?
It was very formidable. Up high, it was almost unbeatable. Down low, it was beatable, but not by many airplanes. It was very good. It had terrible aft visibility. It had unreliable guns. They had accurate guns, but unreliable guns.
Oh wow!
It had a weird system. The guns were powered by compressed air.
Mm-hmm. Jeez.
And the compressed air was all on a common manifold to each gun. So if you blew a seal in one gun, you lost all four guns. And
Wow.
that flaw was fixed, and it was ridiculous. It was a crazy design, but it was fixed. And later on in the war, it didn't become an issue. But when I was flying, it did. It was an issue, and it mattered to me, especially one day in particular. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so tell me about your first deployment. What was your first sea tour after getting qualified in the F-8?
Well, there's one story I ought to tell you about before we get into that.
Okay.
It involved the training squadron, the F-8 RAG, the Replacement Air Group. That's VF-124 is what it was called. And I had about 19 hours in the airplane, and I had an engine failure. And it was an engine failure. It was an engine explosion, really.
No.
Turbine came apart, I guess. And I was out over the water about 50 miles off the coast of San Diego, and a single engine airplane brakes, motor brakes, you're in trouble, you're going to go jump out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. Simultaneously, or at the same time, whichever you prefer, I had a friend down in San Diego who invited me over for dinner that night.
Huh.
And there was a young lady who was also invited to dinner. And I don't know if it was a patch up, a fix up, or what, but
yeah.
They wanted me to meet this gal. And I didn't show up for dinner. And they were pretty ticked off at me till they turned on the evening news and they found out that some young Navy pilot had an ejection off the coast of California and wound up in the hospital. And so I was forgiven for missing dinner. It was a pretty good excuse. And
wow.
They came to visit me in the hospital. After I got out of the hospital, I started dating this gal. 6 weeks later, we're engaged, and 56 years later, we're still married.
Oh, that's awesome. And she just was helping you set this up a while ago.
Yeah, exactly. Same gal.
Yeah, that is awesome. Well, I mean, so the F-8 ejection seat, did you wear the parachute or was it contained in the seat? Was it a modern seat?
It was contained in the seat.
Okay.
But it was, the modern seats are rocket seats. It's a very fast acceleration, but it is a gradual acceleration. So it's not, it doesn't hurt your back too much. The old Martin Baker seats had cannon shells in there. And when they fired, the seat was going full blast when it hit your butt.
Yeah.
So almost invariably, it was a broken back. Better to have a broken back, be alive than to have a really swell back and be on the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
So yeah, it was the price you paid for just being alive is
Wow. So
injured back, almost without exception.
how long were you out from the back injury?
About 3 or 4 weeks. I'd crushed a couple of vertebrae. I was in the hospital 3 or 4 weeks. I was actually grounded for I think 2 months.
Wow. How long did it take them a while to come get you? I mean, you were just off the coast, so did you have to float out there for a while, or did they come get you pretty quick?
Well, actually, that's another good story. I still remember to this day where I was when I ejected. I radioed. I'm on the 255 degrees from Miramar at 49 miles, and I ejected. And of course, the best way to go to a spot is if you're on the radio, you just fly out the radio. So there were a bunch of guys, a couple guys, who got on the radio and flew out and intending to go out the 49 miles. And somebody saw something in the water. I don't know what it was, but they thought it was me. And it wasn't.
No.
It was about 30 miles out. So they dropped dye and smoke and whatever to mark the spot. And I could see airplanes flying around about 20 miles from me.
Off in the distance.
Off in the distance. And I'm hanging on to a raft. I couldn't get into the raft because my back was all screwed up. And there was some guy out about 60 or 70 miles, and he flew in the radio. And when he got to me, I fired off a flare, and he said, "No, you damn fools, he's out here, right where he said he was." And I could see them coming, New York, here they come. And a helicopter came out. I was in the water about 45 minutes.
Well, I mean, all things considered, that's not too bad. That's not.
Maybe from your point of view, from mine.
Did you have any like long-term effects from it? I mean, do you still have like back problems and stuff?
Oh yeah,
from the ejection?
my back still hurts, but
yeah,
what are you gonna do? So anyway, I got qualified and I went to my fleet squadron, which was VF-211, and VF-211 was a bunch of hot stuff guys and the MiG killers.
Okay.
We had more kills in Vietnam than I think any other squadron. So yeah, so I made 2 cruises with them. The first cruise was uneventful. Toward the tail end of the cruise is when we started working over North Vietnam.
What was your mission for the first cruise? Like, what did they have you doing?
It was mostly protecting the bombers that went in. We do a little bit of flak suppression, and I'm sure you've had other guys interview who were Vietnam vets. There really were 2 wars in Vietnam. There's a war over South Vietnam. There was a war over North Vietnam.
Yeah.
The war over South Vietnam, for the guys on the ground, it was hell. For the guys in the air, it was a walk in the park. Or at least for the guys flying fixed-wing airplanes. Guys flying helicopters, not so much. But if you flew a high-performance airplane over South Vietnam, you could pretty well bet the ranch you were coming home.
Right.
If you were flying a high-performance airplane over North Vietnam, you wouldn't bet 10 cents you were coming home. It was a completely different war. So we did some close air support in South Vietnam, and we did that both cruises and after that as well, I'm sure. The missions up in North Vietnam were the ones that were tough. And the other mission we also flew was a photo escort. We didn't have satellites. We didn't have anything like that. So all the reconnaissance was done by a photo plane. And this was not only the reconnaissance, but bomb damage assessment. Everything was done by a photo plane. And for some reason that still escapes me, every photo plane had to have an escort. I'm not sure what the escort was supposed to do except mark the spot where he went down. But they were god awful missions. We hated them, especially night photos, which were particularly ugly because to take pictures, the photo plane would have to drop flares, which would light up the whole sky, and everything they were shooting at him were shooting at you too. So it was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
The war didn't start until March of 1965, really. Mm-hmm. And we only had a couple of months left in the cruise, so that was really the tail end of our cruise.
Yeah.
Second cruise was way more exciting.
Yeah. Well, tell me about that. What happened on your second cruise?
Well, for one, we lost a bunch of guys, mostly captured. We had a couple guys killed. One killed in combat, one killed due to operations. But we had, 5 or 6 guys in our squadron who were shot down and captured. It became a lot more personal.
Yeah. Was this when you had your own MiG incident?
I got to fight MiGs twice. The first time there were 4 of us, and we were escorting some bombers off a target in North Vietnam. And I was flying my skipper's wing, and there were 2 fighters from our sister fighter squadron on the other side of the bombers. Mm-hmm. Bombers were here, we were up on the left side, and the F-24 was on the right side. Anyway, we were coming off the target, and I spotted 2 airplanes closing on our 7 o'clock. And I broke into them. Whoever sees leads, so I took the lead, and we broke into them, and I identified them as MiG-17s, and the fight was on, and I was a young Lieutenant JG with buck fever, and I fired a missile head on. And the missile went nowhere. It was just as stupid as I was, but it felt pretty good to fire something. And I worked a little harder, and I got on the tail of this guy. And we carried 2 AIM-9 missiles, 9Ds. And I got ready to fire the second missile, and it didn't leave the airplane. And it just stayed right there. And that was not uncommon. But I have guns. I'm flying the last of the gunfighters, right?
Yeah.
So I closed in on this guy, and in the meantime, a single MiG-17 crossed right in front of me, right to left. He's already in gun range. I just got to get on his tail. And I peeled off into him, and I got him in my sights, and I fired my guns, and I got about 6 rounds off, and the guns quit. Because of the reason I told you a few minutes ago. So that compressed air common manifold did me dirty that day. I had nothing left to fire. So I went back to the ship. The two fights that I had were notable for two things. And as a matter of fact, every fight that I know of was notable for one of those two things. Well, first of all, the two things it was noted for was it was low level fight. The whole fight took place low under 4,000 feet.
Wow. Yeah.
So we fought right down to the ground. And the second thing that was the second notable thing about it was that we were never able to maintain section integrity. The fights fell apart in a heartbeat, and it became every man for himself. And I think I've had the occasion to be a guest speaker at Top Gun school on several different occasions. And I'm pretty sure that our inability to maintain section integrity and section discipline and fight discipline was one of the reasons Top Gun exists. Yeah. And so I mentioned that to them whenever I speak there. And when I say that I think those things are true for every fight that I know about, I'm not sure every one was low level. The two fights that I had were very low level. And so, but I know that all of them broke down as far as section integrity goes. So yeah. Anyway.
Wow. And when you came back, where'd the MiGs go? Did they just bug out as well? I mean, did they just figure we're beaten?
Well, they didn't all bug out. My skipper shot down two of them. So.
Oh. Nice.
Those two guys didn't bug out.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, I mean, did you debrief after and, hey, how does the debrief work after something like that?
It's pretty jubilant, actually.
Really? That's awesome.
There's you go down into the debriefing area, the skipper of the ship is there, everybody wants in on it. And there's a lot of sweat, a lot of cigarettes, a lot of coffee, and a lot of smiles, awesome. on this particular fight, because we came out unscathed and we got two airplanes. Awesome. And the thing that was exhilarating about it was the first time we had seen MiGs. We hadn't had any MiG contact. And maybe I should back up a little bit. I don't know how the Air Force did it, but the Navy would have a bomber group and the fighters would be kind of separate from them, a couple of miles away. Mm-hmm. And to get better visibility, I guess. And we didn't see any MiGs. And we had a new air group commander, and his name was Jack Monger, and he said, let's tuck the fighters right in with the bombers. So we all look like one big gaggle. And maybe the North Vietnamese thought that there was no fighter protection, because as soon as we did that, we started seeing MiGs.
Yeah.
So for whatever, awesome. Maybe it's coincidental, I don't know, but that's the way it was.
Yeah. How long were these sorties? Were they did you do a lot of tanking in 3 or 4 hours, or were they pretty short?
No, they were short, less than an hour and a half. Okay. we did fly some missions that required tanking, but they were in some areas that we won't talk about.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, let's talk about your second MiG encounter then.
This one was not a good day.
Uh-oh.
This was a terrible day. There were actually two missions involved. There was a bombing mission about 35 or 40 miles south of Hanoi, and I can't even remember what the target was. Factories or something. I don't know. But there were supposed to be 4 fighter escorts. One airplane went down on the deck. We had a mechanical problem. So there were 3 of us. And our job was to protect the bombers. At the same time, coincidentally, well, maybe not coincidentally, but at the same time, about 30 or 40 miles north of us, there was a photo mission going on.
Mm-hmm.
And my roommate, a fellow named Dick Smith, who I still stay in touch with, was the escort on that mission. So we had 2 missions going. We escorted the bombers off, and Dick, as we were escorting them off, Dick called down that the photo plane had been hit and the pilot ejected.
Wow.
So now we had 3 fighters escorting this group of bombers and 1 solitary fighter up north trying to keep track of where the parachute was. So the leader of the escort, his name is Cole Black, we made sure that the bombers were off, and he said, let's go join up on Dick. So 3 of us went to join up on the photo escort to help him out, keep track, try to protect the guy on the ground. So I joined up on Dick's wing. So now there were 4 of us up there. And we were getting low on fuel. And Cole Black dispatched Dick and me to go. Oh, this is a fairly important part. As we were orbiting these guys, I took a hit. I was hit by something. I don't know what it was. I think it was determined later on. It was probably either a 37 or a 57. And I knew I'd been hit, but the airplane was running fine. The engine was fine. The hydraulics were fine. Everything was fine. So I knew I had some airframe damage, but the airplane was running. Cole said to Dick and me, listen, go out and get some fuel. And the tankers did not typically come over feet dry over land. The tankers stayed offshore. So he said, go get some fuel and then come back. And then he and his wingman would go out and get some fuel. And we'd stay as long as we could to try to protect this guy on the ground. Well, we were maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 miles away. And he calls Tally Ho MiGs. So the MiGs attacked the 2 guys trying to protect this guy on the ground. We're all low on fuel. We turned back to try to help out. I couldn't keep up with Dick. My airplane was, well, I'll show you a picture. You want to see a picture of the damage?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
I don't know if this will work or not.
Wow. Oh, wow.
There were,
So it's fluttering? Was it causing like a control issue?
oh yeah, I'll show you another one. Here's what it looked like from the bottom. Here we go.
Jeez.
And there were about 80 holes in the airplane, shrapnel holes from all up and down the whole empennage.
So that you were low enough. Like, what altitude were you at that the AAA got you?
Uh, 3,035
Oh, so
feet
you were low altitude.
low altitude.
Yeah. Wow.
So anyway,
That's incredible.
I couldn't keep up with him because the doggone airplane was flying so lousy. So I was a beat or two behind him. And when I got to the fight, it was a fur ball. There was an airplane right on the tail of one of the F-8s, and there was a MiG on the tail of one of the F-8s, and I didn't know which one it was. I called for everybody break right, and it was too late. And this, my buddy's airplane tail exploded, and he ejected. And we had two guys on the ground.
Oh.
I was going to close on that guy when right in front of me, almost like the first mission, but this time two MiG-17s passed underneath me right to left. And I went to roll in on them, and as I did, and I was pulling, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 Gs, trying to get on these guys' tail. And as I made the turn, I looked in my left mirror, and there's a MiG on my tail with guns blazing. The MiG-17 had 3 guns, 2 23 millimeter guns and 1 37 millimeter gun. And the 23s were going brrr, and the 37 was going pop, 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 and I could see every flash, and they were all coming at me. And now I was no longer in a position where I was trying to kill anybody. Now I was just trying to stay alive. My first instinct, and I get asked this every time I speak at Top Gun, what was the first defensive maneuver that popped into your head? There was no defensive maneuver. It was pull, just pull, spoil his solution. And that's what I did. My airplane was bucking like gangbusters because of the doggone damage.
Right.
So I was in trouble. So I decided I'd try to scrape them off on the trees, and I dove for the deck. Of course, the F-8 was faster than the MiG-17. So I dove for the deck and tried to scrape him off on the trees. And after a bit, I pulled up, see if he was still there. And he was turning around to go home.
Wow.
So I turned around and shot his ass down.
Did you really?
I did. I was in an interesting situation. I was shot up. I was out of fuel. I long ago didn't have enough fuel to get back to the carrier. We had 2 guys on the ground. It was a terrible defeat. And I knew I had enough fuel to get to the water to eject and maybe find a tanker. But so the question was, do I turn around and shoot this guy down? Because he is dead meat now. Do I turn around and shoot him down or not? And I decided I would. and I stuffed a missile up his tail. That was in 1966. That's 55 years ago. I always wondered whether the guy lived or not.
Yeah.
My missile exploded on his tail. Last I saw of him, he was in a descending right turn, pouring out black smoke. I didn't see him crash. I didn't see him eject, because now I was interested in getting some fuel.
Right.
But I found out in a book recently that was sent to me, written from the North Vietnamese perspective, that he did eject and he did survive.
Okay.
And I was happy about that. Anyway, it's not the end of the story, actually. I go to.
Oh, it sounds like it's getting good.
I head out and I'm screaming for a tanker. There's one tanker in the air, and he just topped off my buddies, and he just topped everybody else, and he's got no fuel in his buddy store. He's got nothing. The guy's name is Art Culver. I always give him a pat on the back every time I tell his story, because he saved my bacon. He said, "I got no fuel, Phil." I said, "You're the only thing around." And he was a friend, and he had the capability. He was in an A4 tanker. He had the capability of transferring his own internal fuel into the buddy store and giving it to me. And he gave me half his fuel, half of his own fuel.
Oh, wow.
So that we had enough fuel to make it back to the ship, make one pass, and eject. And we both made it. And I always give him a thank you, Art Culver.
Wow, that's incredible.
I talk to him once a year just to relive the story. But
yeah,
it was a pretty exciting day. It was a terrible defeat. We lost two guys. Another one, that airplane was out of commission for quite a while.
Did they survive? Did they get captured? What happened to those two guys?
They did. They got captured. They spent 6.5 years being tortured by the North Vietnamese.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. There were two of the. Well, one of them was a squadron mate. One was a photo pilot. But yeah, it was crappy. What can I tell you?
Yeah. Have you talked to either of them? I mean, have you kept in touch with either?
The photo pilot, I never saw again. The fighter pilot, I saw him a couple times. I saw him shortly after they were repatriated. We went to see him. And then about 7 or 8 years ago, we were out in California and we hooked up with him and his wife and had dinner.
Okay.
And about 2 weeks, I live in Maine. About 2 weeks later, he was killed in a private plane crash.
Oh, no.
It was almost some kind of providence that caused us to go out there and have dinner with him.
Wow.
It was good. Anyway.
Wow. After the mission with the MiG, did you continue flying combat missions after that, or what happened?
Oh yeah, not for very long. Because we were at the end of the cruise. I think the cruise ended in the end of July. We only had about a month or 6 weeks to go to the end of our cruise. So.
Oh, okay.
But we kept flying. Oh yeah, we kept flying.
Yeah. Did having that in the back of your mind, did it affect you at all? Or was it just, hey, I got to focus on this mission. I can't think about what happened in the past?
Well, you I think it tried to focus on the mission. I don't think it goes away.
Yeah.
I'm a perfectly healthy guy. Not only I'm 81, I'm physically fit, and I'm mentally as good as I can be, at least according to my kids. I don't have PTSD,
Yeah.
but I see his airplane get blown up every day, every day.
Really? Wow.
And I see that guy behind me shooting at me every day. That
Jeez.
doesn't go away.
Yeah. So, I mean, what was it like coming home? Did they give you a shore tour, or what was your next assignment after that?
I had a year. I got I got awarded a pretty good medal, a pretty high medal for uh, having gone into this fight with a shot up airplane and a no fuel.
Yeah.
I had a year to go on my tour, and they said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know. How about I'll be an instructor in VF 124 in the F-8 training squadron." And they said, "You got it." So I was the most junior instructor, and I'm sure to this day that the reason they gave me that instructor was that's a pretty good gig, and I'm sure the reason they gave me that was because I got the MiG and because I was pretty well decorated for it. And
And the award was the Navy Cross, right? That's what.
it was.
Yeah. Wow.
And
That's incredible.
there's a fine line between getting a Navy Cross and getting a court martial, I think. Because I think if
Wow.
I'd lost the airplane, it wouldn't have been so pretty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you did what you had to do, and that's all anybody could ever ask of you. How'd you like being an instructor?
As far as teaching goes, if you had to describe what's the best teaching you could do, it's teaching fighter tactics in a one-man airplane. Because you got your own airplane. Terrific,
Yeah. I
right?
love it.
I love it.
Yeah.
But I hated teaching. I just wasn't any good at it. It's just
Yeah. Wow.
you
Did you do that for just the last year and then get out, or what'd you
just a
do?
year, then I got out. Yeah,
What'd you do after that?
I went to work for Pan Am.
Oh, okay. That was during the glory days of airline flying, wasn't it?
It was. It
Yeah.
was.
What was that like? What'd you fly?
I started out as a navigator on the 707. Yeah, and it was the glory days. And what was beautiful about it, or there were a lot of things beautiful about it. Somebody asked me one time if flying for Pan Am was as good as it seems to be. And I said, it's not that great. I said, yeah, sure, they pay you a lot of money and you go a lot of nice places and you get a lot of time off and sure they surround you with beautiful women, but other than that, it's really
For deregulation, right?
before deregulation. And I'm told this wasn't so when I was flying for Pan Am, but I was told that back in the day that Pan Am captains had hiring and firing authority.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
On the spot, huh? Bad FO, you're out. See you later.
on the spot. I don't know if that's true or not, but I was told that. I do know that me as a young 27-year-old in 1967, I got to fly with some guys who were at the tail end of their career, who were aviation pioneers. I flew with a guy who was the first guy to fly a single engine airplane solo over the North Pole.
Oh, wow.
Charlie Blair, nice guy. He was married to Maureen O'Hara, and she would go on his flights with him. So I got to fly with him for an entire month, and I got to bounce around Europe with Maureen O'Hara. Oh
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and Charlie Blair too. But
Yeah. That's awesome.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had some great times.
What aircraft did you fly? Like, did you upgrade to captain on anything?
No, my aviation career after what I just told you is pretty dismal.
Dismal.
Um, yeah, when I reported to Pan Am, there were 4 guys in my class. I still remember all their names. I never even interviewed with Pan Am. I just sent them an application, and they were hiring Navy pilots like crazy. So
Yeah.
they said, "Yeah, report to New York on such and such a day." And I went, and we got a little indoctrination, and the instructor said, "You won't believe where you'll be in 10 years." And I couldn't believe where I'd be in 10 years. I was furloughed.
Oh,
I,
no.
I was furloughed. So my entire aviation career had a 10-year hiatus in it. So I never made captain. I flew for Pan Am from 1967 to 1976. And from 1976 to 1986, I had nothing to do with aviation.
What'd you do?
I had 4 little kids, a wife. I did whatever I had to do to feed my family. The thing I did mainly was I sold Mack trucks.
Did you really? Wow.
And, actually really enjoyed it. If you haven't picked it up by now, I'm a pretty easygoing guy, and I enjoy life pretty much. And
Yeah, that's awesome.
I've had a great life. I've got a great family, 4 beautiful kids, 12 grandkids, and
Wow, that's a fun Christmas.
it's a great Christmas. I'll tell you what.
Yeah. Well,
But so my glass is half full all the time. So I had a good time selling Mack trucks too. I was recalled in 1986 after 10 years, and I went back to Pan Am. And I flew with them for 5 more years until they went out of business in 1991. And that was a grim day. I was a co-pilot on an Airbus flying into Miami, and we got a message saying, "Land it and park it and go home. You're all done." And I'm not exaggerating.
was there any warning? I mean, did you have any idea?
Oh, we knew it was heading for the toilet.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to be blind and an idiot not to see that. But the end came suddenly.
Wow.
There was no warning like we're going to close down in 2 weeks or anything like that. They made the decision and boom, they stopped everything.
How'd you get home?
I got home on, I don't know, one of the airlines. I still had cockpit pass privileges, and
Yeah.
they gave me a ride. I guess it was Delta, maybe. And
Wow.
they gave me a ride home to New York. They gave me a bottle of wine to take home because I was kind of sad.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a shock. You just say, park this jet, get off, see you later.
Yeah, every guys are left stranded all over the world to get home. Yeah, I was lucky. I was in Miami. Yeah.
What'd you do after that, though? I mean, like, what? How do you?
Well, if you remember the history of the airlines at that time, there was a lot of turmoil. There was a lot of mergers, and Delta had bought part of Pan Am, and United had bought the Pacific routes, and it looked like some of the Pan Am pilots were going to go to Delta, and some were going to get a shot at United. Mm-hmm. And I got a shot at United. I interviewed with them and was rejected. And then about 6 months later, they called me up and said, "You want to interview again?" And I said, "Yeah." And this time they hired me. And so I spent the last 10 years with United, where I did make captain.
Wow. So you had to start all the way at the bottom of the seniority list again.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
God, that sucks.
But that's why I say my aviation career was somewhat undistinguished, and that's why I have no idea why anybody wants to talk to me. But
That's right. That's right. You were talking about that. Wow. So what did you retire flying at United?
737.
Okay. So what have you been doing since then?
Well, what have I been doing since then? It appeared to me like airline pilots have this terrible track record of being healthy all their lives and then retiring, and then they go in the corner and they die. And I said I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
I like to make furniture. I'm a pretty good woodworker. So I make furniture. I sell some, but mostly I give it away. But I always wanted to be involved in the theater.
Oh.
And so I found a local community theater, and I went there one day and I said, I'm pretty good with tools. I said, "Can I help you building a set?" And they're always looking for people to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, "Yeah, come on down here Saturday morning." So I went down there and I started building sets. And I liked it. I liked the people, and I liked it. And after about 3 or 4 plays where I was doing sets, I said, "I'm going to try out for a part."
Oh.
And the play was Phantom of the Opera. And
Yeah.
I decided I was going to try out for a part. And they gave me a little tiny part where I had, I think, 3 lines to speak, and I got killed in the first scene. And I was hooked.
Awesome.
And so I have been doing it for 20 years now, and I love it. I still build sets. I serve on the board of directors of the theater. I get a part every once in a while. I've had some good parts, actually.
Yeah.
And I'm around all these young, energetic, full of life people, and I'm convinced that it gives me life and gives me.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
So my wife tells me I'm the only human being on the planet that starts singing before his feet hit the floor. I'm not sure I'm the only one, but I do.
Awesome.
And I'm a happy guy. I'm not worried about my next meal. Life is great.
That is
I'm
awesome.
81. I'd like to live a couple of more years. I'd like to see a great grandchild somewhere along the way. But
that would be amazing. Well, your story has just been amazing, Phil. I appreciate you telling, you sharing it with us, because it's just been, I mean, what an awesome career. Even though you say it was abysmal, I still say you did some great things, and it's been very fascinating. This has been an awesome interview. I appreciate your time. Do you have any parting shots, anything to share with the audience?
No, just love life, love each other.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks, Phil. This has been an honor. I appreciate it so much. Thanks for coming on the channel.
Okay, thank you.